Welcome to our fourth panel with discussions on homelessness in Seattle. So our focus today we're celebrating transformation stories of people who have struggled at some point and have found techniques, tools, or personal strength for whatever transformation they needed. And we are excited to celebrate and hear the stories and experiences so we can access some of that information and see what we can do in Seattle to create change on a much bigger scale than we're seeing right now. So welcome everyone, and thank you to the Hoff Foundation for providing us with a lot of wonderful people to present today. And I would like to invite you all into this space. We are on Duwamish lands. We're going to honor that as well. And we're going to do a slight guided meditation. If you're welcome to join, you're welcome not to. Just helping everybody get grounded and centered, clear your stress of the week, so we can really be respectful and collaborative in our discussion and come from our hearts and share meaningful things. So thank you again. Okay, so if everybody brings their backs to a nice upright position, maybe shake out your spine a little bit, wiggle your neck, shrug your shoulders, and then sigh. Take a nice breath in and kind of let it all out. And now with your inhale, bring your awareness to your heart. It's like your heart is a magnet calling back all the energy you've given away or lost today or this week, just bringing it back to you in your center. And at every inhale, bringing your awareness to your heart. And then as you exhale, just imagine all the energy you've taken on from others and tasks and to-do lists and any stresses. Imagine it just rolls down your spine, through the chair, into the earth. So it's inhale, bringing awareness to your heart, and exhale and grounding out your stress. And let's just sit with 3 or 4 more breaths with that intention. And then I'd like to just honor that we are all in this together, and we're here focused on collaboration, community, and support. And I'm so grateful everyone's here. So whenever you feel ready, please open your eyes. And we will begin. So, I'm going to introduce all of our lovely panelists, and then I'm going to pass off the mic, and we're going to hear everybody's stories. So our first panelist is Sharon Blinko. Thank you for coming, Sharon. And our second one is Angie West. Thank you for being here. Vicki Monk is next to her. And Angela Scarborough. Thank you for being here. And Lenora Gauthier. Yes. Great. Thank you, welcome. And Kimberly Smith is next to her, and Chandel Orr is on the end. So I will pass it off to Sharon, and she can start us off.
I'd like to share my story. It started, actually I'm the People Helping People Foundation founder. My story came about, foundation came about as a result of my sister, who was stricken with E. coli many years ago after she and her co-workers ingested bottled water that was contaminated with cow fecal matter. She was working at Costco in Tukwila. When they had the outbreak, there was cow fecal matter in that water. A lot of them were sick, got sick. She was admitted to Valley Medical Center and went into a coma. While she was in a coma, Dr. John Bondi initiated her L&I claim because it was an outbreak. When she came to, the hospital dismissed her right out of ICU, sent her home without a diagnosis. She finds out she had the E. coli 015787 bacterial strain. 2 weeks following that release, when she returned to work, just briefly, she found out that her co-workers were sick as well. Costco court gag ordered the other employees They falsified and altered the L&I claim. The 5 lawyers that agreed in writing to represent my sister never did. They arbitrarily walked away. I haven't been quiet, I just haven't been heard. I started writing her story about 6 years ago. This happened 20 years ago. And I just completed it. And I'm in progress of releasing it. One of the changes that I made was in reference to the dispensing of bottled water from bottled water dispensers, where you turn the bottles upside down, the big blue bottles. Those have been on the news, they've been on forensic files, they're dangerous, they're unhealthy to drink from because you have an open exposed reservoir. People drink from the spigots if they don't have cups or glasses, they put their bottle openings right up over the spigot when they want to refill the bottle which they're drinking from. That is dangerous, that is unhealthy. So I'm raising awareness besides in progress of bringing about a change in the dispensing of bottled water and the usage of bottled water dispensers in public places. I walked into a Wells Fargo off of 4th and Pine Street about 3-4 years ago, saw one of those dispensers in their lobby, shared their story with the employees, got back to the lawyers and the corporation, they removed those from their lobbies nationwide because it's a liability. They don't know my sister, it's all about the money. The other is my son went to a college. First he graduated 3rd in his Navy class. He went to a college to become a doctor. There were issues at this college. They dismissed him 2 weeks before he was to get his doctor's degree. Taking a time test, the instructor was not there to proctor him. In view of the test, he passed, but they would not pass him, she would not pass him. He went on to take his national boards, he scored 495 out of 500. And their students, they pride in their students scoring high on the boards. I am a former Boeing employee, working there for almost 30 years. I would have 40 years now, and had I not been lawfully terminated as a line inspector since 1978. I found that they were in violation with their tab mechanisms, the safety of flight per engineering requirement, FAA requirements, where these parts were not measured. And that is what controls the pitching of the planes. That's why those planes went down, because they shortcut it. They were mandated to change those parts out. This is after I had gone back to line number 1, and at the time they had thousands flying around. This is on the 737 next generation. So a few years ago, we decided for my son to go back to school and get his degree. He received 3 letter recommendations, went back to school. He just graduated in June. I gave up my apartment so that he can go back to school on my pension, my Social Security. Also write and sell greeting cards. I'm now in progress of getting an apartment. And there's so many ways in which people can become homeless. It's you lose your good health, you lose your job, you get a divorce, just so many ways. And what's always for lack of better words, what's said, why people become homeless on the negative side. And one of the things I would like to see is for the city or whoever writes policies or whatever, to where if the home owners, apartment owners, where they can come together and allow people that are homeless, keep a unit or 2, or however, the bigger the complex, the more units are available for people that are homeless. In particular, they have kids and dogs, versus just for low income. You have a long, huge 5-year waiting list, and apartments are very expensive. I just found out that the city has a program, the multi-tax exempt something, it's new, A lot of people don't know about her, where you go to rent, and whatever the market rate is, that rate is reduced because they will go according to your income, which is a nice thing. Because affordable is not always affordable for everyone, you know, and so I'm trying to make a difference, to help make a difference.
So my name is Angie West, and what am I supposed to share just specifically on my experience with homelessness?
That's the theme.
Okay, so basically, long story short, I left home when I was 16 years old, just due to having a really dysfunctional family. And it just really kind of was a slow decline from I became a teen mom, and then I was in abusive relationships. And the core issue that I struggle with is pretty severe self-esteem, low self-esteem, and low self-worth. And so right away, I just started picking people that validated how I felt about myself. And I got into drugs really early, and I became addicted to crack cocaine by the time I was, well, essentially I started using drugs when I was 12, but I didn't really hit the hard stuff until I was 17. Had a baby when I was 18, and then the relationship with his dad ended, and I was a teen mom, and I essentially found myself in another bad relationship and homeless, which led me to doing things to take care of myself and my son. I worked in the sex industry, and I just, if it wasn't for having cars, I would have been truly homeless. But I had a vehicle and it was broke down, but I lived in cars and I couch surfed. And the truth of the matter is it's just, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't love myself. I had no self-worth, no love. And even on top of that, I was a believer. I grew up in a very spiritually abusive Catholic home. So by the time I was 15, I was like, no, don't want nothing to do with this God stuff. These people are hypocrites. These people are just nothing I want anything to do with. And so I ran from God for many years. And I ended up getting sober off of the hard drugs because I was faced with losing my child. My ex, his dad, sued me for for sole custody. And I was like, thankfully, something in me was wise enough, and now I know it was God working in me, but I was like, no, I'm not losing my son. And so I got sober off the hard drugs. But what I didn't realize was alcohol's a drug too. So I became involved with another man that I met in the strip club, and for the next 20 years, it was pretty severe alcoholism. Even though I wasn't homeless, I still carried all of those things that I started out with. Just truly not knowing who I was. And so I was constantly trying to fill that hole with drugs, with alcohol, with men, and it just never did it. And so I got sober and in recovery when I was 33 years old. And I discovered that the missing piece was Jesus, and I'm a believer. I mean, I can't sugarcoat it. That's everything good in me and good about my life is because of my relationship with God. And so now my life is absolutely amazing. I finally found the strength inside and the courage to leave the marriage that was abusive for 20 years. And so truthfully, I'm 2 years into being completely independent on my own, and I'm a business owner. I own my own business, and I'm truthfully, if I don't work for maybe a month, I would end up homeless. That is the truth about, I think why so it doesn't have to be drugs. It doesn't have to be addiction. It is expensive in this, for this state for sure, but I work hard and I make good money when I have work. But if I don't have work coming in and I don't get paid every week, I can't pay my rent.
But my life today is amazing. It truly is amazing in the sense that I found love, I found my value, I found my worth. And so now my choices are all coming from a place of knowing that I deserve the best in life now, where before I didn't. I was just hopeless, and I was empty, and I was sad. And that's just sometimes how life starts out for some people. We don't all have great childhoods, and some people do and still end up homeless. So it doesn't matter if you come from a great home, a not so great home, if you have addiction, if you don't have addiction, it doesn't matter. I think homelessness can truly affect anybody. It could be one sickness, one illness, that puts you in the hospital and gets you super in debt. We in the recovery community we say addiction has no boundaries. It doesn't care if you're male, female, white, black, rich, poor. I think that's true for homelessness as well. So, yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Hi, my name is Vicki, and I've been homeless 4 times. I started using methamphetamine when I was 17 years old, and I fell quickly in love with that drug, and I used it for the next 21 years. It made me feel like I was Superwoman. It made me feel like I was invincible. When people tell you, oh, I was numbed by the drug, I was never numbed by that drug. It always gave me an amplified feeling, a fake amplified feeling, and it brought me further and further down to where I didn't have any self-esteem, any self-worth. And drugs will take you further than you ever thought you'd go. They took me places I never thought I would go, and I did things with people that I didn't even know. In 2003, I lost my apartment and ended up at the Mission, and I met this lovely lady, Judy, that's my mother-in-law's name. I met this lady, Judy Hoff, and I went to an event that she did called Queen, It's a New Day. That was in 2003. I was so impressed by the love and caring of the people there. They didn't care where I had been or what I had done. They just showed me the true love of God, and it really made an impact on me. And so I started going to her church and listening to her teachings, and started changing the way I thought about myself. Eventually I got into her housing, and at the time you could go from transitional housing to housing projects. I got into Project Reunite, where it gave me, let me back up. I lost custody of my daughter before I went to the Mission, and then when I was in Judy's house, I got sustainable housing with the YWCA called Project Reunite. Today, that's not possible because the HUD rules, or the definition of homelessness, you can't be in transitional housing, but you can be high on dope. I don't agree with that because Housing First isn't what we need. We need to be giving affordable housing to people that are actually doing something, that are actually making their lives better, that are showing the progress and showing that they're changing. They're changing the way they think. They're changing the way they act. They're changing their whole direction in life. And I worked at Catholic Community Services for 90 days, and I had to send a lot of people away because they wouldn't lie that they were actually sleeping in a tent or sleeping on the sidewalk. But if they were using drugs, they could get housing, which is what they call Housing First. And personally, if I was using drugs, as still at the time, and somebody offered me housing, I would have taken housing, because I did. That's exactly what I did. I just put the drugs further hidden. So I had a duality of life. I had one life that people seen and one life that people didn't see. But I never stopped using that drug when I got the house because I didn't need to. So with the help of Judy and the Hoff Foundation, I had a good start in a new life, and I went through Project Reunite. I'm saying the same thing again, but you're gonna edit this, so.
My name is Angela Scarborough. I'm 47 years old. I have 27 months and a few days clean off of heroin and methamphetamine and many other things. Let's see, when I was 4 years old, I lost my father in a motorcycle accident. And that's kind of when my abandonment, trauma, confusion hit me. My mother was a single mother, raising 2 children, and my father made an extremely large amount of money. And so my mom hit the pavement, and she wasn't going to let us live the way she did. But that meant she was never home. So you get 2 girls left at home, and one of them's raising you, and she did drugs. Several things along the way, I was abused, I was raped, things of that nature, but my mom wasn't around. My mom loved us, she took care of us, but I found drugs. She was dating a man who did drugs. I would have never known it. My mom and stepdad were very productive people, but he was in a motorcycle gang, and I found out he did drugs through my sister who did them too. And I found methamphetamine and started to realize that I was a different person. I could be myself, I was skinny, and life was great. Well, when I turned 18, the only father figure I had, who was this methamphetamine addict as well, I found him buried in an excavation cave-in, so buried up to his neck with the dirt and his hands sticking out. That was very traumatizing for me, because in my head he was, once again, the only father figure I had, and he was Superman. So I'm traumatized, burying more stuff, so I started using more methamphetamines. And I thought I'd move places and find different people, and there I was. And I moved up here, because my mother tried to kill herself, and so we shipped her up here to my sister's, and I just found I was productive as well. I was working and all those things, never really in trouble. I was always on the honor roll, things of that nature, but my secret was meth. So when I moved up here, I was doing great, but like I said, I found the drugs up here, and then I found out I could sell them, and nobody up here was really doing them. So that was really a thing I did, and I met a guy, and we were in love, and we were together about 5 years, and I was at some point wanted out, not from the relationship, but from the drugs, because I was been doing them since I was 14. This is about 26 years old, and he was murdered in front of me, and I was almost murdered as well. And it was at that point that I kind of threw up my hands in the air. I was like, what, I couldn't do anything right. I became homeless. I found a life of crime. Within 5 months of his death, I accumulated double-digit felonies, let's just say that. That changed my life. I became, they gave me a break on the time they gave me because of the situation with him, and it probably wasn't a good thing. They gave me a mini breaks because of that, and it pampered me, but I needed help mentally. And like I said, once I was a felon, all deals were off. I could not find work. I could not find, not work that could provide for, I found work, and that was selling drugs, because I made way more money doing that than I did at the 7-Eleven that would hire me. And now I don't even think 7-Eleven will hire you if you're a felon, but back then they would. And I thought that I had a son, and I thought I had it all together. But because of my felonies, even having a child, I couldn't get housing. They refused me. So I left my son at my mom's, and I just went back to what I knew, and that was addiction. And I ran, and I found a man that treated me how I felt. I probably wore more black eyes than, I think I had 13 booking pictures, let's just put it this way, and 9 of them I had black eyes in. And I never called the police or nothing because I pretty much felt like I deserved it or I couldn't get any better. I just kind of stuck with that, and we were homeless. And it was probably the only time in my life that I felt like, I just remember walking down the road and wanting to jump in front of a car and realizing that no one would probably care anyways. And I don't know what stopped me, but something did. And I finally had the guts to leave him after 8 years. And I was just living in a spare room at my mom's, and just guilt, shame, my son not being able, I didn't know how to be, and I was begging the system to give me some mental health help. I'd gone to jail, I did treatment, just wasn't working. I had something mentally wrong with me. And they gave me some tests every week, like a couple of, and some medication that made me angry and violent. Nothing really worked like my drugs did, And eventually I broke up with the guy, and I found another drug that made me feel better, because that drug was making me be way too awake during my suffering, and that was heroin. And I OD'd several times, really didn't care. Somebody had to bring me back, I don't think I was trying to die. But throughout that time, I'd given up trying, and I was really good, believe it or not, I didn't really look like a heroin addict. I really didn't look like I was doing meth, and I really kind of kept it together. I mean, everyone would always tell me, gosh, you look like a soccer mom, you don't look like you do drugs. That was, I thought, a gift, but really it was kind of a curse. It was within a year of using that drug. I was homeless, I was selling drugs, I was hopeless, and I committed more crimes, and it sent me to jail. And I had, that's where my shift came. You said, where did your shift come? I had been in and out of the Snohomish County Jail so many times that when I walked through the door that time, I had so many of the guards that knew me by name say, Miss Scarborough, what are you doing here? You're way too old to be doing this. And I was like, what do you mean? It's, it was my home away from home. And I just, that was where my really biggest shame came in. I was like, I have nowhere to live, but you guys will always take me in, and you're free. And God told me right then, I was on my knees going, how do I get out of this addiction? Is this what I have in life? And my mental issues were what the problem was. I wasn't crazy. I just didn't know how to shift it, and I didn't want any other drugs other than the drugs I took. And I just got serious. I said, you know what, this is enough. This is enough. Whatever I have to do, whatever it is, I took every class. I was on committees. Everything. I did different this time. I didn't sit around and watch TV and play cards and talk smack, talk about war stories. And I was in prison, and I was at the end of my stay, and I did about 3 years, and and I really got a deal because I was blessed, but they were telling me, I'm thinking, where am I? I have to have a place to go. I'm going to be homeless again. Here we go when I hit that street, and I know I got a buddy that's probably waiting for me to get out to sell some of his product, and that's a place to stay. That'll be a quick come up until it just breaks me. And I was like, I just can't do it again. I can't go back to that. And thank goodness, out of nowhere, they said, well, there's this new place. It's called the Hoff Foundation. Judy let me in, and I came there, and I've been there for a year. I'm getting ready to move into my own place, but it's the only place that I have had to that trusted me, gave me a space. But now I have a job with the homeless, and I see it. It's just nonstop. Not all of it, but it's impossible to, just the way people look at you changes. And it's a battle every day to get to look in the mirror, if you can find one, you know, if the McDonald's will let you in there. But yeah, so that's how I surrendered. I still struggle because of my felonies. I still struggle with I'm less than a paycheck away from homelessness, but I just keep putting my best foot forward. And I pray for everybody that's out there that may see this and that's out there homeless, because here's a hand. You know, that's all I can say.
Hi, I'm Lenora. I grew up in addiction. My mom was an alcoholic for the first part of my life. I was just sharing with somebody I can remember. Actually, I don't remember. I had a blackout when I was 4 years old, and I only know it was a blackout because of having my own blackouts many years later. Usually when you're 4 and you wake up and you're in pain, you know why. And I didn't. So I grew up in an alcoholic home, and with that led to trauma and abuse. My mom left that guy, and we ended up where my grandfather lived, and so then my grandfather, he was also an alcoholic. And so my mom and my grandfather, and luckily we lived in a small town, but they drank all the time. There was only one bar, I knew where to find her, So fast forward through all of that, it was about 15, 16, I started into my own addiction. To back up real quick, my mom did get sober when I was 11 and a half years old. But I did go into my own addiction, dropped out of high school, continued to party. At 16, I ran away from home. I lived in Seattle, went to Portland, and I was one of the homeless street kids down there back in the mid-'80s. I was there for about 8-9 months, and then I was sent back to my dad's. I went through multiple years after that, transitioning in and out of homeless, sleeping under the bridge in the U District. I just had an addiction, and I didn't know how to maintain any type of housing or a job for any length of time. At 22, 23, was the first time I went to reach out and surrender into recovery. My oldest son was removed by CPS. At this point, I was in Florida. I got clean for 18 months, and I went back out. Fast forward, I come back to Seattle. I have 2 more children. Managed to stay in housing, but I stayed in housing because I had a man that was working or paying the bills or whatever it was. It wasn't due to me sustaining that housing. It was a male sustaining that housing and allowing me and my 2 girls that I now had live there. We had several domestic violence calls from the police, or the police showing up, and so with that, my 2 girls were then taken by the state due to the addiction and the domestic violence, which was in another introduction into recovery. I went into treatment, I went into IOP. I stayed clean that time for 9 years. So pretty much all of my 20s, by the grace of God, was recovery. Although I still had lost custody of my 2 girls, and they've been put up for adoption. And when I got clean that time, my primary drug of choice was alcohol. However, I reached for anything that was mind altering. When I was 9 years sober, clean, whatever. I had had an injury, and the doctor started prescribing me pain meds. Even though I had told the doctor I was an alcoholic. So their idea of fixing that was to only give me half. And my addict kicked off with a vengeance. And so I learned then, I started to manipulate the doctors to give me more, give me more, give me more. And before long, I was in the heroin, I was shooting dope, I was ODing. My last stint in jail, they revoked my probation, gave me 90 days, because I was on a DUI probation, gave me 90 days. And you know, I know somebody that calls us Snohomish County Jail God's Hotel. And it truly was that for myself. I went in, I ran into somebody that I used to use with, and she told me of ways to be able to go into housing. By the grace of God, I got sober back in 2013 when we still had some funding and we still had some programs. So when I came out of jail, I was able to go into inpatient. I was able to get the ATR, that was access to recovery, to put me into an Oxford house for 6 months. Upon the Oxford house ending, I got the letter. I didn't even try to seek it. I got the letter from the Department of Social and Health Services that I could be eligible for HEN. I received HEN for another 18 months, so I was able to focus on me and therapy and everything for my first 2 years. And then when funding started to go down, I was, they told me I had to get a job, which rightfully so. It kind of forced me to do and pushed me into doing what I was afraid to do. And so I've worked since then. And today I do work with a lot of the homeless population. And the one thing I share with them is I was exactly where they are, and the only difference between me and them is I walked a little further in my recovery and I have a little bit more access to knowing where the resources are right now. So at this point, come the 21st of this month, I will have 6.5 years off all mind-altering substances.
Well, my name is Kimberly Smith, and I'm actually here as a person who became terminally ill and lost their job at the ripe age of 50-something. I'm 63 now, and I've been beating the odds since 2015. They gave me 2 years in 2013. But I lost my job downtown. My apartment was next. I was couch surfing with my daughter and 2 teenage grandsons, which was crowded. But I started going to counseling through the YWCA and found out about their housing program, the Shelter Care Plus. And I went to stay, because couch surfing isn't considered homelessness. I didn't qualify for anything, and I wasn't in need of addiction services, and so I didn't fit anything other than somebody's old grandma, So I went to Monroe Women's Gospel Mission in Monroe, and I stayed there for 3 months, and in the first few weeks, I think, I was offered a chance to attend Queen It's a New Day, where I met Judy Hoff and Gloria, and the whole experience was just wonderful. I needed a makeover. And the makeover didn't stop there, because when I was in the house, while I worked with domestic violence and sexual assault survivors and victims pretty much for 30 years, I had also been a victim of layoffs due to Homeland Security funding and such, so I went into medical billing. And I had a good job, but no 401. And the rest of the time I've been working on profit for different, programs. And I thought I knew the system. I found out very soon that it was way different, and I didn't fit anywhere, and I wasn't about to fall through the cracks. And so I took on my role at the Gospel Mission as one of the girls and got to see the other side after being a shelter coordinator. To be a resident was so different, but at the same time, I could see where problems would come up and maybe head them off. And I enjoyed the Bible study, and I went to church every Sunday, and our pastor was always right on. It was something that was right in your heart. And I remember in the backyard, we had this big arbor of vines or whatever it was. And I was standing there and I said to God, I said, I need a path. I'm not sure where this path is going because I'm obviously terminal. And he said, you're asking the question, you're on it. And so from then on, I got my housing approved. I moved in, I'm stable. I did the Hep C treatment, which I got from surgery in 1981, and got rid of the virus. And so I'm still waiting for transplant, but I'm not sick enough for one. Another story. The medical system and transplants has definitely got to come up a little. But I was at home and, you know, not feeling sorry for myself because I was doing my therapy and going to pain group and helping my neighbors and you know, spreading sunshine wherever I go. And I ran into Gloria at the local TO Lighthouse Festival and asked about volunteering because everyone else had said they want an 8-hour commitment, they want an 8-hour day, they want this, and I can't promise that. And so she said, well, come on down to Esther's place. I've been there for a year, volunteering on Mondays. They appreciate what I can do. Don't expect me to hurt myself in doing anything else. And I love sharing with the ladies and talking to them about my different struggle, but it's the same struggle because we have to take care of each other and we have to stand with each other. And so by getting out of the house and re-volunteering, here I am. I'm back in a place of comfort for me as a professional and as a retired professional. I want to bring this forward some more. And that's what I do. Thank you.
Okay, my heart is pounding above my chest a little bit. As I got closer, it was just. So I'm Chandel, and I too grew up in dysfunction. I don't even really remember my childhood. I mean, I think the first memory I had when I was about 9 or 10, just really dysfunctional, alcoholic mom, stream of just abusive boyfriends. I have 2 sisters as well, so I was about 13, I left home. I felt safer in the streets than I did at home, basically, and I thought I had found people like they care about me, but you know, I just never felt loved, so I was incapable of loving, you know, and I was angry. Spent a lot of the time in juvenile prison, and then when I turned 18, and I just, you know, addiction was just the main thing. I drank a lot when I was a teenager. Then when I was about 18, I was always using meth. I'm recovering from heroin and meth, and so anyways, ended up having kids, and I had 3 girls, or I have 3 girls, and I had met, okay, so my youngest daughter, she came early. I wasn't using drugs or anything, but my mom had to take time off work to help with my other kids. We were in the ICU for a really long time. She had an undeveloped throat. So because my mom was helping me with the kids, we got behind on rent. And so after a long court process and everything, I ended up in a motel with my kids. And I met Prince Charming, right? And thought he was gonna save me. And he was extremely abusive, isolated me from everyone. And I started using meth again, and I mean, the psychological damage and just physical abuse, mental abuse, you know. And I stayed with him for about 4 years, and we were living in this trap house, and basically he ended up getting locked up, and so the house that we were at just wasn't a good place for me and my kids anymore. And at this point, my family seen me at 130 pounds, and they're all angry at me and like, you know, but and just seeing me just these drugs take over, you know, is the only way I could handle everything that was going on with this man. And I stayed, you know, and then when he got locked up, I had to leave that house, and I ended up going up north because my family was out that way. But you know, remember sleeping in the car with my kids, and my oldest was crying because she didn't want to sleep outside. It was like the dead of winter, but I didn't want to reach out for help because I didn't want CPS taking my kids, you know, and in a drug-induced mind, you think that you're doing the best for them. Well, CPS ended up getting involved, right? And I said, yes, I'm a drug addict, I need help. And so CPS put me in family drug court, but I was still talking to my ex on the phone and everything. Well, okay, so back up. So CPS sends me to a treatment center, right? And I get kicked out, and I'm just like, this, because I got into family drug court, and then I go to treatment and they kick me out, right? And I was just thinking, you know, I just ruined it all. And then I remember messaging my mom saying, because I had been in the streets for about 5 days, and then I was homeless for a while too. It took me a while to get into treatment. My kids were gone at this point, and I called my mom and asked her if she could help me out with $5 because I'm starving. And I got, you know, Chanel, you got kicked out of the treatment center. And she's just telling me all these things, right? And so I'm like, you know what, F it. Like, and I remember I was just walking, and I had said my goodbyes in the text message. I was like, I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And I remember I was walking so long that I felt like my legs were going to detach from my hips, you know. And I'm going to walk off this overpass, you know, I was going to jump off, and I sat down and I'm just crying, you know. And I remember I was at like Walmart, and I was out by the casino, and I could hear my kids screaming for me. So I was like, basically, I felt like I was in hell being tortured, you know. And then anyways, I'm walking on this mission to go do what I was going to do, and all of a sudden the sheriff rolls up on me, right? And I'm just like, oh, it's the last thing I need right now, you know. And he goes, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And so anyways, they pull over. He's like, you don't look okay. And then this social worker, her name was Lauren Rainbow, she sat down and started talking to me. Long story short, there's this program in Everett that gets homeless addicts off the street. They get them into housing and all this. So they got me into detox that day, and I ended up doing good for about 7.5 months. I was still talking to my ex on the phone. Long story short, I ended up having a relapse. I had got my kids back for a trial return home, and then I had relapsed. And then they took my kids back from me, and I had to go back into the streets. And so about 7.5 months later, I am just started shooting up dope. I'll just in these places, and just, I ended up at this hotel, right? And I was at this motel, and I was just, God, life was really bad at that point. And this lady that was running the hotel, she asked me if I would go to church with her because she was about to kick me out. And but she said, will you go to church with me? And so I ended up going to church with her about 3 weekends in a row. And then all of a sudden I got prayed on, and something was different that day. And I reached out to the social worker again. And when I was in treatment, started getting curious about God. And then I got an interview for one of Judy's houses. And so I moved into Judy's house when I got out of treatment, and I just had such a huge support system from Judy, you know, those ladies that come to the house. And then I got to do Queen It's a New Day. And I worked on, I got, you know, I started building a relationship with God. And I that day that I went to detox, though, I made the choice that I had to leave my ex and cut all ties, or I wouldn't stay clean. So I did that. And then so I ended up moving into Judy's house, and I think it was about 9 months later, I moved back into the apartment that I have with my kids. And you know, because CPS was going to terminate my rights, you know, but I fought through that, and I still have that support from the Hoff Foundation. I mean, the Officer Neighborhood Program, they helped get me out of the streets, but what helped me keep my sustainable recovery, you know, I have over 2.5 years now, is getting the support that I got from Judy and the people that, you know, work with Judy and Esther's Place and the Hoff Foundation and Queen It's a New Day and just all these things, support. Judy saw me crying pretty much my whole first year clean. You know, so just having that support system and people believing in me that I could do this, you know, working through that shame and guilt. And now I have a job helping other addicts, and I'm in school to be a licensed social worker. I'm still single 2.5 years later because I knew I had to focus on myself and really learn who I was. And, you know, because I didn't know how to pick relationships. My kids are doing well. You know, my youngest ended up moving with her dad. But I get to have her on summers and stuff like that. But I still have a huge support system, and I'm so grateful for Judy Hoff, the things that she does in the community and how many women that she helps, and these houses are beautiful. And, you know, if there's anything that the community needs, is that people have hope in addicts. I was that junkie that was sitting outside. I would walk into stores and people would follow me, you know, 120 pounds. And, you know, thinking that I remember when I could walk through stores and people weren't following me or staring at me, you know, and just having that in the community where people believe in you and give you hope, you know, and you can be proud of who you are no matter what you've been through and the mistakes that you've made. I never had a support system until I got into Judy's house. You know, that's what the community needs. We need support system. Judy makes women feel beautiful, you know. So just having a safe place to go. Is that why I'm here today?
Oh, I think they said, questions? Is that? Well, I was curious, I think, I forgot, Vicky. I think you had said something about housing first or, like getting clean and.
Yeah, I'm kind of scattered.
No, I just,
Okay.
I'd love to just hear you explain that a little bit more because, you know, what you think is, like, should there be a requirement to get clean and then get housing? I was a little bit.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, their definition of homelessness is living in a tent or living on the street or the sidewalk. If you buy your own hotel, you're not homeless. If you couch surf, you're not homeless. If you're in a transitional housing, you no longer qualify for housing because you're not homeless. And
I was curious about the rules.
the rules behind are what I just said.
Yeah.
And when I was in her housing, the rules to HUD housing weren't over the Project Reunite. So I was able to live in her house for 4 months, and then I got into this project through the YWCA called Project Reunite, and I got custody of my daughter back, and I had sustainable housing for 12 years. But today, we have women living at our housing that are also going through CPS, and they don't qualify for the housing I qualified for because they're not sleeping on the street.
Right.
Since they bettered themselves, and they're not sleeping in a tent, and they're not using drugs anymore, they no longer qualify for housing. And I'm not a good speaker now, but I'm taking speaking in college, and someday I'm going to be speaking to housing and urban development about this.
So I'm curious, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything, and there were no policy limits, there were none of the limitations, no money limits, what would be like one thing that we need to do or change, or what would you want to receive at the low points in your journey to get you where you are now or whatever you want to go?
In the beginning of my recovery, I didn't know about all the services that were offered, and I was too shy and too downcast. I was broken. I was a very broken person, and I didn't have the strength to reach out to people or even ask what was available. So I stayed at the mission for a year, and I didn't go anywhere besides to treatment and to in AA groups. And then I got a ride to her program. It was like a Celebrate Recovery. And something was different this time. This time I believed in Vicki, and I knew other people believed in Vicki. I'd never been given that concept when I was a child. You can believe in yourself. You're beautiful. You can do anything you want to do. Nobody ever told me that stuff. If I had one thing I could change, it would be that somebody would have told me that when I was a little kid.
To say just one thing is so out of the spectrum, because I believe that I believe that 100% of America is affected by addiction and homelessness and things and brokenness. If it's not you, it's somebody you know, it's your neighbor, your car got broken into, all of the above. So I really truly wish I could see. I was always told you have to raise a child with a village, or you can't, something like that. It takes a village to raise a child. And I have found now that I am in recovery, and through Judy's housing, which I don't like to say that, Hoff Foundation, but that's what it is, because she's my friend, my mentor, my pastor, and all those things. But I've created, she's created these recovery communities, and where I'm not judged for my mistakes. I will admit them. I will sit here and tell you all day about them, but that's not who I am anymore. That these places why people are homeless is that they're knocked down here, and economy keeps rising up. And how do we stop it? How it's out of, like, my brain wants to explode. But if you have this community that you can create that is in recovery, that's mandatory, that you have to prove, random UAs, whatever, which I used to run from that stuff, but I'm okay with it now. I'm happy, because I can do it. It's teaching the world or people accountability. I think that no matter where you come from, in addiction, homelessness, brokenness, abuse, we lose our accountability. And that's what I have learned the most on this journey, is I can be accountable for myself. And so therefore, that's why I'm not scared to speak my past anymore, because I'm not ashamed of it. It's just what it was, But that lady does not exist anymore. It's just what made me who I am today. So I think that's kind of cool, in a sense. It's just a shame that I don't want anybody else to have to live it, but I'm sure somebody else is living a different one. So, but yeah, communities of recovery, whether it be abuse or addiction or abandonment or broken families. And there's people out there with money, and it's just too bad they don't all see. They don't, it's what do we do? That's what we're here to talk about, I guess. Anybody else? Don't get me started.
Yeah, I don't know, this might sound weird, but I feel like so much of these issues truly start with things like trauma, abuse, mental illness, and family dysfunction. And I feel like our school systems are so messed up in the sense that from an early age, in the perfect world, I feel like if they had things that were mandatory classes like algebra and math that teach kids from an early age about things like family dysfunction, abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, mental, emotional, so that we are educated from an early age to be able to recognize these things and know these things, so that when they start happening to us, we can say, oh, this is this. And also, we have all this Me Too stuff nowadays. Like, why is this not, why are we not taught these things in school? Like, the tools of recovery, that's not attached to guilt and shame, it just is. From an early age, we would be having these skills and tools as young kids to where when life starts happening and things start happening to us, we can learn how to deal with things. And now we're just literally thrown, into adulthood. And I can't tell you how many, I'm sure you guys, the more people you learned, were just like, what is this recovery stuff? And really, it's just a set of tools in life to deal with problems and feelings and emotions and situations in a healthy way.
Yeah.
People think the word recovery is drugs and alcohol. It is everything.
It is.
It's everything. And so, and also, put God back in schools. I think that'd make a huge difference, so that's if I could, say I want something that would help our world, there you go.
I know for myself, one of the things when I had been clean for a while and went back to work, and I started out at minimum wage and got up to the most I made was $12.50 an hour. And at $12.50 an hour, I could not sustain an apartment. I could only live in clean and sober houses.
Right.
And today, we have a lot of our community that's homeless that also has mental illness, or they've lost a job and they don't have an addiction problem such as I did. But in order to go into a lot of the clean and sober houses, you have to be willing to work a program. You have to be willing to work some form of an addiction program. And so that leaves some of the other people that kind of fall through the cracks that do not have an addiction.
Yeah.
And they just struggle with mental illness or they lost a job.
Right.
Yep.
Or physical.
Yeah, or physical illness, sorry.
No, you got it. I was
The one thing that I would change, if I could, and this is just from my own personal experience, when I was in family drug court, they kicked me out because I couldn't quit using. It was about 2.5 or 3 months before I met my other social worker. So I was going through this great program that had this huge support system, and then it's like I'm failing, and like my life's going back into this turn, and what does an addict do? She continues to use to cope and figure out things, and then I get this other social worker that honestly had no faith in me whatsoever, and so that moment that I needed that support, I was left to figure it out on my own, and I can see why parents involved in CPS go to the streets and lose their kids.
Yeah.
Because everything that I was doing, it was just, she just kept knocking me down. And also, my kids were traumatized because of my addiction, and there was not really any support for that, so the thing that I would change is that there would be more advocates for children dealing with CPS. There would be more of an opportunity to, this woman is saying she's an addict, she's sleeping in the car with her kids, she needs help, she's scared you guys are gonna take her from them. What do? You throw them in foster care. And then, it's like there's that thing, and this is just my own experience from CPS. I was violated on signing so many things. I didn't have any knowledge on it. I was by myself. Thank goodness for a good CPS attorney that could help me. It's like, I felt guilty enough. And then I just, these meetings, and it's just, there's a missing thing there. And I know why there's so many parents still walking on Broadway that I know that have lost their kids, because there's a missing support for that. And these kids go through a lot. There needs to be more therapy and more care for the children. That's the one thing I would change. That's where the recovery needs to start, on children.
Yeah.
I do not like to admit that. My kids are healthy and they're resilient and they're doing great, but they went through a lot, and it took a lot of counseling, and I got this really amazing therapist who she takes the SHS insurance and private pay, and she's amazing. She helped me, and now she's still seeing my daughter. So we need more support for children that are suffering.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Go ahead. I like to see more lawyers represent people that have been wrongfully terminated or when there have been wrongdoings that take place, to represent people and where there's no statute of limitations.
Do you get rights back?
Oh, I'd like to
Yeah.
see that,
Yeah.
because I'm actually getting ready to, as soon as I get myself situated, I'm actually going to be getting all of my documents together in reference for help from my sister, as well as for Boeing. And then my son, he's the one that has to take care of his own. But he has a job waiting for him. But he has other, because of things that have happened, he has, which deals with law and all that other, and nothing he did wrong, but internal revenue, student loans, those kind of things, they can shut you down.
Yeah.
So luckily he has someone that's in his corner that's gonna take care of that, but it's gonna be a process. But I'm the one that's had to carry everything, and they're gonna all hear from me.
Right.
Does anyone in the audience have a question for our panelists?
I have one, maybe Sharon, right, Sharon?
What's that?
So I feel like people are talking more and more about unions lately, and I'm wondering if, have you had any experience with unions? Do you think
They didn't represent me.
so they didn't represent you? And why is that? Because from what I've heard, losing a job can also be, and wrongful termination can also be a way that people end up.
Yeah, exactly, that's right, yes.
So what do you think the role of unions could be?
They need to stand behind the people.
Who pay the dues?
Yeah, they need to stand behind the people. And mine was a safety of flight issue. So now you have, a few years later, you have 2 planes that went down. People lost their lives because Boeing did what they did. And I know what they did because I've been reading up on it. But what is so God-given is that the very reason that I was terminated was because of what I found, which had to do with safety of flight. And the fact that they were mandated to change those parts out back to line number 1, and you had planes flying, thousands, and we're talking about the tab mechanism, that right there is flight. That is flight. And as an inspector, if you get caught, one of those planes goes down, you're at fault, same goes for the mechanic, the plumber, the electrician, whatever, guess where you get to go? You get to go to the penitentiary. And you know what Boeing will tell you? Go get your own lawyer.
Yeah.
Your stamp's on there. There's so many stories there. A lot of people are coming forward now. Whistleblowers.
Yeah.
I am a whistleblower. And I'm getting ready to come forward. I just haven't come forward yet because I'm too busy doing this other stuff. And I'm one of the people that wound up staying at Angeline's. I used to hear about Angeline's, but I never knew what all Angeline's did. Yeah, if it hadn't been for Angeline's, my son wouldn't have his degree today. So I'm going to give back by helping shelters that need help, not just they need funding to maintain.
Yes, we do.
To maintain the shelters so that they're cleaner. No, I mean that. Yeah.
Okay, Mike?
Yes.
You know, as I listen and I think about it every day, because I deal with homeless people, as Gloria does every day, we have Esther's Place, and it's a day center for homeless women and children. And then I think of the masses of homeless people, and I think of them as people. I think that the communities, if we could look at our homeless as people, not as a problem. And if we could look at them, how can we help them become restored as a human being versus get them in houses so we don't have to see them. We'll do this, we'll do that, but look at them as a person that if you went to that person like at Esther's place, the first thing I do when I see a lady walk in the door is say, as we all do, Gloria, is say, hi, my name's Judy. What's yours? Is there anything we can do for you today? And you know, every day there's people that will say, yes. Do you have any resources? You know, can you help me get into the diversion center, which is, you know, the program that will help you get clean and sober and get the support that you need in the community. And I think that if we as a whole, all people, would start to look at the homeless person not as this scary guy high on meth and heroin, which he is, right? He is. But the fact underneath that is he's somebody's son.
Yeah. Yes.
He's a human being. He needs love. You know, and we go out, and I don't, but people go out and they hand them blankets and they hand them food and is treating them. I don't find that as useful as what we could do as a society. I'll stay positive about that comment. But I think what we could do is offer services like in different locations, like we have Esther's. So let's say Seattle, okay? If we had services in different locations where men could come in, because there's a lot of homeless men out there I see, and they're just wonderful human beings that went the wrong way, just like all of us that talked here today. There's no different. They're just people. They're hurting, and now they're stuck. So if they had services, they can go in and they can say, like we do at Esther's, how can I help you today? And have people there that will treat them like people. Give them a shower, give them a smile, give them encouragement, give them programs. We do art therapy. We do everything to get a person to come back and remember that they're a human being. And instead of separating ourselves from them, calling them homeless, and they are treated like a stray dog, literally. So you go out and you feed that dog, right? But they're people, and they need love, and they need care, and they need hope. So I think an answer could be is to have different locations for men, not big places, like we have big missions and stuff, and they're beautiful and they're wonderful. This is a different concept because the homelessness is out of control. It is everywhere we look. It's different pods of places like in Esther's place where people can come in. Yes, you can get a bite to eat. Yes, you can get a smile. Yes, you can get a shower and a change of clothes. And you can be treated like a human being. And everyone who walks in the door, and there's $1,200 a month, okay? She calls them by name. You know, when you call people by name, there's a big thing that happens in their souls. So I think we just need to put our hearts back on. Kind of like your meditation where we started, you know, breathe in your heart. And I think as a society, we need to do that. And I'd not look at this as the homeless problem. It is a human being.
Exactly.
Families.
So any final questions? Final thoughts?
Did you know I have a lot of questions? Yeah, I guess with this last question that Sharon had and Vicki had the answer, you know, what are the barriers and restrictions? Like single men with their kids don't really have many options. It sounds like hopefully more and more. What are the barriers that are useful, like having to get clean before getting access to housing, and what are the barriers that are not useful or that don't make sense? I don't know if that's a big question. Probably.
I'll answer like a lot of them. Somebody else have a hand up? I'll tell you what I see because I've been in the field for a long time helping people. I think getting clean before you move into housing is the answer, and then offering like we do in our women's housing, we offer wraparound services, life skills classes, counseling, recovery work. And I think if people came in that way, they would be like these ladies. We honestly see 95% of the women in our housing that when they go, they make it forever. And so I think that the model works, and it's not just for women, it would work for men too.
I have a thing. I went to, what is that hotel over on Aurora?
Aloha.
Aloha. that they would not allow me to stay there because my income is too high. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate all of you guys for coming and for being so open and thoughtful and sharing. I just think you guys did a wonderful job representing your story in this bigger picture, and I think that can be inspiring and helpful to many. And so we will do our best to circulate this dialogue. And if anybody wants a copy of it, you're welcome to it. And yes, again, we appreciate you guys. Oh, please.
Well, just of what you just said is that I believe that every single person sitting in this room, that we all need to share our story. I mean, every one of us came from somewhere. Every one of us has done something, and I think that's what we need more of, is sharing ourselves with others. We get so caught up in our phones and our busy life and this and that. Yeah, I mean, my life isn't that busy, but it's gotten that way, you know. And I'm sober, and I'm getting my mind right, but it's like sometimes I have to tell myself, like, Judy, I gotta remember, I would ride down the road to work, Broadway and Everett, and it's just homeless, and I just want to and it's like we're all this little community where she works, where I work, where she works. In fact, all of us work in different places, but we're right there in the midst of it, and it's like we're these same people trying to reach in and grab a hand and pull them out, and it's bummer some days because our hearts get broken. Yeah. But I think you have a story, you all have a story, whether it came from abuse, homelessness or not. We all have a story. There's something. So I just want to say that, you know. So thank you for letting us share our stories.
Yes.
We would love to hear yours. I mean,
Well, thank you for letting us come and share our stories with you.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
We can perhaps stay later if you like to have that conversation. But we also want to wrap up the filming and everything. Cool. Well, thank you again, and I appreciate all of you. And yes, we will continue moving forward with the next stage of trying to work on this problem. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.